Thanks, Kostya. Buddy. I'll just tell a sad story about Boomer GM here. Boomer GM has a little clicky thing on his microphone. And then every time I'm like, oh, it would be wise to just turn off the microphone while, you're getting set up. But then I tell myself, hey, Boomer Jim, you're gonna have to undo the mute button when you go live, man. That's just the rules of the show. But do I generally forget? Yeah. Boomer GM just forgets that all the time. Okay, so what was I saying? I got 3 games. You can see I got 4, but I'm going to focus on 3, and I have 4 because Mr. Percival sent me in another one. There's a little story behind each game, something I'm interested in. These are all people in the dojo. Okay, so let's start with D. Kufos, who I believe is Omega Dave on the scoreboard, and I'll just tell you a quick story about Omega Dave. Let's go over here. He submitted a sensei question, and maybe I'll just read the sensei question because I thought it was kind of interesting. So, how do I know if I'm overrated? This is from Omega Dave. I joined the dojo a couple months ago, and in that time span, I feel I've learned more about the game than 6 months of self-study. But my rating has been dropping, currently down 10 points. I've played 15 classical games, I've analyzed them, I've done the maiden 1s a few times, and I'm working on the maiden 2s. I've gone through the LCTRW3 book 6 times, not exaggerating, and I review at least 1 chapter of it a day on Chessable. My point is, I'm doing the homework, but I still lose to stupid blunders in my games, and I'm on a disheartening losing streak. Should I keep going at the rating band I signed up in, or is this all evidence that I actually need to take a step backward? Okay, so what we're going to say about this, all right, is progress can sometimes be slow. I've looked at the scoreboard. Omega Dave, a.k.a. D. Kufos, is doing great work. Great work. And where is he at? Let's talk about it. He's in the 800 to 900 band. We'll see, actually, when we open this game up, that he is 1154, okay, at least at the time of this game. And the challenge that I've said repeatedly on the under 1,000 category, I've called it Plato's Cave, is that you need to be hyper-focused on not dropping stuff. So my basic thing today is I wanted to look at one of Dave's games and kind of get a sense if my intuition was right, that it's about dropping stuff. Maybe it's not. I'm going to check, a personal check for myself. Maybe I'll say something interesting also about Dave's games. Call it Plato's Cave. It's a little bit of a joke, obviously, but the idea is that in the under 1,000 level, you don't really want to start thinking about stuff that is too highfalutin. You don't want to think about openings. You don't want to think about really intense chess dynamics stuff, right? You want to be hyper-focused on stealing stuff and not losing your stuff. And then mating the dude with a queen or a rook in the endgame. That should be your template until you get out of the Plato's Cave. Right. And what do I want to add to that? Well, I'm sure see Boomer GM just forgot what he was going to say. But that's the gist of it right there. So let's get into this, and maybe I can say something intelligent as we're going through it. Okay, takeaways. Okay, we talked about. By the way, the other thing you can do at the under 1,000 level, the thing that you can actually get very good at is just by focusing on the opening principles, not the fancy opening theory, but just the principles. You can become a GM level at your opening play as long as you just focus on the principles, bringing out your dudes, right? Okay. Now, one of the things that I stressed in my reply to Omega Dave, and that we'll see if this is kind of true in the game, is that if Dave starts worrying about, oh, am I in the wrong category, different cohort, should I be doing something else, then that person is going to start spinning like mad, thinking about why isn't it working. Whereas the whole point of the program, or a big point of it, let's call it pillar number 1 of the program, is you have a structure and you have something to be accountable to whilst you're doing that structure, so that you don't turn into the guy that David Pruess kind of makes fun of a little bit in the video that we have. You don't become the guy who's going from one chess resource to another, just kind of getting confused about how to progress in chess, right? You want to keep things as simple as possible. It's already complicated. It's complicated enough as it is, right? Okay, so let's get into this game. Dojo Rufus is black. I assume also somebody from the dojo. Good, and I like this note. It probably doesn't help you to know at this point that d6 is the Philidor, right? But d6 is, of course, has to be a playable move. In fact, any move that develops your stuff and controls the center, like d6 is, will be a fine move. Okay, now here's already a beginning of a problem. I do love this opening. We're in the wrong spot. We're in the wrong space at Omega. We're in the wrong space. So if you start concentrating on opening stuff, you are going to be missing the forest for the trees. The trees for the forest, or whatever you want to call it, right? You're not going to be able to see your biggest problem, which is your hanging stuff. Okay, I haven't even seen you hang anything. But in general, in the under 1,000 section, that's the issue. And it's just confusing if you start thinking about opening stuff instead of just openings principles. All right, so let's read a note. This gives white the center after all the trades are done. Mostly true. I guess the way I would put it is what happens now is the queen normally doesn't like to get developed so early, but here controls a lot, okay? And I even like the evaluation, small advantage to white. Oh, look. Yeah, great notes. Great notes. By the way, I love, at this level, any level really, but I love when we're talking about opening positions, we don't talk about theory, but rather say what we see, right? And he says it well. Normally the queen on d4, so early in the game would be a liability, not so in this position. Okay, bishop e7, definitely a mistake. So black, what should black do? I always encourage people to say what they should do. Knight f6, I think, would be a mistake because it gets popped with e5. So I think d6 followed by knight f6 has got to be kind of on the agenda there for black. Okay, so here we go. Bishop e7. Has to be a good move. But why didn't we take, right? Yeah. So, let's go through this variation. Yeah, and the thing to see about this pawn grab is not so much that we have stolen a pawn, but by stealing the pawn, we have forever weakened the black king side. And I think just in terms of notes, it would be good to discuss, to say, like, were you afraid of queen g7? Were you worried you were like falling into a trap or something like that? Those are the kinds of questions I would like to, see answered. Okay. Knight c3, you're definitely still better. Knight f6. Now, what I want you to see, just in terms of development principles, is the move e5, which, let's see what you say about it. e5. I'm pretty sure, too, it would have been more accurate for me to push e5. And let's say why. And like, for example, look at this variation. You don't need to know anything more than that because you have undeveloped the knight, right, by playing e5. That's what I mean by opening principles, right? It's a game of who gets their stuff out first. And in a way, it's highfalutin, but it's so basic at the opening level that, as I've said before in other streams, like I have taught a number of people who are just beginning, and in a very quick matter of a couple games, if I'm watching over them, they can play GM level moves just by following the principles, right? So that's why I feel it's a skill that is accessible to the under 1,000 crowd. But it's not where their games are going to be decided. Their games are going to be decided on losing stuff, right? Okay. Uh-oh. Jack, you can't hear anything, buddy? Wait a second. Let me just confirm. Can someone tell me if they hear me? Because Jack couldn't hear anything. Now it's okay. Wait, no, fine. It's okay now. So let's carry on. Right. So knight f6, bishop d3. Now let's say that, let's pretend that e5 didn't exist. Then bishop d3, I would say, is a little weird because it would be more active on a square like c4. But you're fundamentally developing, okay. c6. Okay. d6 would have definitely been better, and here you could have popped him again with e5. Maybe it would be good to note in the notes that c6 does have the virtue of at least containing or dominating this knight. Though it's definitely a mistake, and right, we should say question mark on c6. Why? Does not follow the opening principles. So notice with the opening principles, you get it right away. It's like you don't need me to tell you that once you know the principles, that d6 is the correct move, right? But if you do a lot of opening stuff and start doing chessable or whatever, it kind of loses the clarity that you need until you get to the point in the program where we say, dude, this is the moment, to maybe create a file. And we say that, I think, at the 1200 level, 1200 FIDE level, so that's something like 1350 ChessCom, that you should do an opening response to e4. And then forget about the rest of the openings, right? And I know no one's listening to me. I know no one believes me. But I'm trying to make the point. And you can see it here. If these players didn't know words like Philidor or anything else and just focused on the principle, definitely Dojo Rufus and D. Kufos would be doing better. All right, here we go. F4. Let's read this. I simply decided to take up more space before castles. Now, after castles, my rook will be backing up this pawn. Looking at it now, though, I again see that this was inaccurate and gives black time to play d6. Correct. e5 would have been much better. Great. And notice, too, in this variation that you give, e5, knight g8, you don't need to go further than that. You can say something like clear advantage. Because, dude, your development advantage is amazing. And now the bishop on d3 looks great. It didn't look so great before, but now it looks really good. Let's say also with f4 that we want to be thinking about development. And sometimes f4 can be a good developing move. Let's imagine there was a pawn here, and our rook we were already castled, and we played f4, and there was friction. Then that pawn would have a future where it's going to move, and the bishop would be free, and the rook would be free. At the moment, though, f4, now you're blocking the bishop, and you're going to probably have to spend a tempo taking care of this. So, not following opening principles. If e5 didn't exist, then we would say castles, right? All right, here we go. d5. Not only it allows e5, it encourages. It encourages e5. Yeah. Okay. Now, we will say, however, that it's not nearly as bad as it looks. Because on e5, knight d7, which is what he should have done, Black is actually asking white some interesting questions. Notice how these two pawns cage the knight on c3. There's no juice over here anywhere. And give you this question. So there's no castling, right? Now the queen is a little bit uncomfortable. And let's just say the obvious. This would be some questions for you to answer, right? So one of the amazing things about d5 is maybe it's not so bad. d6 certainly feels more natural to me, but I don't think this move in itself is that bad. Yeah, c5 seems incorrect because that d5 pawn is going to be loose, and knight d7, as I pointed out. So now bishop b5. Okay. Now, one thing where people don't believe me is they don't think that tactics are everywhere. They tell me, Kraai, when we analyze our games, that there's tactics in our games, what are you talking about, buddy? I want to do more tactics puzzles, and I want to say tactics are everywhere. So let's take a look. Bishop b5. Would king f8 give white some drama? The point is maybe the bishop will be a little funky-bunky, and we might be able to do some kind of queen a5 thing. So, for example, in this move, we have this followed by d4, pop the knight, and then queen a5 check, pick up the bishop. If queen d3, we are encouraged to think about either c4 or maybe the weird knight e4, maybe the strange knight g4 as well. The point being that white's bishop is in danger, and we have things like this bishop trap looming. So if we go back a second, I'm trying to say I'm not convinced about bishop b5, but do I have a much better move? Let's find out. Let's say, wait, we're here. It might be a fine move, honestly. Let's say I go here. That way on bishop d7, I've got this move, and I don't have to worry about that bishop b5 stuff. Now you can say, Kraai, this is pretty highfalutin. And in a way, it is, but I want to stress that just what I see when black plays c5, first of all, that this knight was dead, and suddenly it's alive. And I got all this stuff. Then also, though, when I play check immediately, I'm like, spidey sense is going off. At least I'm worried about some kind of queen a5 check later. Whereas this thing, that looks like a nice advantage. Okay, and in fact, we're going to transpose to that position because it went pop, 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 and this looks like a pleasant position for white. Now, the Omega Dave says that maybe he should have played Dojo Rufus should have done this and interposed with the knight. The bummer there is we lose this pawn, and that knight on d5 is a true monster, right? Okay, now sometimes Kraai, he's talking, and he doesn't always see what's going on in the chat. He tries. He tries. Okay, now sometimes what Angry Nartier is saying, now this has to do with the famous layout question. He's saying sometimes we don't see what's going on in the comments. So what I'm going to try to do for tomorrow's show is that comments bar, I'm trying to make it bigger and myself smaller. So this is in a way a practice run at that graduate show. So let's read what else we got here. Deck Adventures, can I get some help? Yeah, Vic, what do you need, buddy? What do you need? Mr. Biscuit, hello. Hello, my friend. What about ef6? I thought about ef6 in a variety of positions, but it seems like we were losing our queen. Right? Our queen's in danger. So sometimes you can take the knight in such positions, but it doesn't seem to be working here. All right, queen a4. Black is in trouble. And that's why we can say that bishop d7 was actually a mistake and king f8 was kind of interesting. Okay. Pop. Now, could we also have played knight takes e4? Yes. Does this seem even better, though? Yes, it does, because now the knight on e4 is hanging completely. Right? This doesn't do anything. Check to the miserable bishop. That doesn't do it. And now he's totally done. Okay. Good. You know what's so embarrassing? You know what's so embarrassing, my friends? I have looked at this game before, haven't I? Haven't I looked at this thing before? Yeah, I feel like I've seen this. Dog, you've seen this before. Or maybe I've just seen something very much like it. Okay, I might go over another game of Dojo Rufus. They're a great game. Great game. And he's playing somebody lower rated than him and takes him out nicely. So maybe actually I'll find another game. Let's do that real quickly. I'll try to say mildly entertaining things while I do this. Okay? D. Kufos. D. Kufos actually, too, he hasn't got... I was about to say he doesn't have any more recent games, but that's just not true. Okay. Let's do another. I'm just going to grab another quick game here. Add game. A load game. Add game. Okay, add game. Sometimes it takes forever. So this is a different game. The Kufos is black. Let's flip the board. All right, now, here, bad news. He's gotten seduced by openings, and he's downloaded my endgame repertoire. Not the time. This is where you got to trust the program, my friends. You got to trust the program. This has nothing to do, your chess right now has nothing to do with openings, okay? All right, here we go. Odd, yeah. A little bit odd as well, okay. There's nothing wrong with bishop e7. Fine. Fine. And now white gets frisky with g4. Okay. Let's talk about this position. By the way, you know, white has some kind of notion about what they're doing themselves, about like attacking you as if maybe you had maybe you had played g6, bishop g7 or something like that. And gets frisky now with g4. Let's talk about it. Why is it controversial? Because dude hasn't developed his stuff, right? And now I think we should be probably much better, okay? But it's a challenge of figuring out what to do. And I like what you say. H6 doesn't look that great because it's kind of, we've gratified him by giving his g4 move a purpose, right? Now, a great rule of thumb is an attack on the wing should be met with an attack in the center. And so just intuitively, I would want to check it more. It would be the move d5. Does it work? Oh, we'd have to analyze it a little bit, but it looks very promising. because we're going to blow open the middle. We don't care if we sacrifice a pawn. This dude isn't castled. What should he have done? Probably a move like queen d2, right? Get your business order before we blow open the position. If d5 directly doesn't work, we can consider moves like c6, rook e8. Yeah, and notice with d5, what are we doing? We're getting our business going. We're opening up the position. Okay, now I want to stress with b6. You're not toast or anything after b6, but the issue is where clearly you want to develop your bishop, and that's good, but like putting it on b7, I'm not clear it has that much future on b7 because it's hitting that rock on e4. But I'll tell you what, for where we are right now, Dave, this is fine. You're trying to develop your stuff. You're not hanging anything. So actually, I take all my criticism back. g5, okay. Mildly controversial because he is encouraging your knight to go to h5, which you do great. I can't think of that as a mistake. I cannot. There's no way that is a mistake. Queen d2, and now you played ed4. So the controversy about ed4 is that you're losing your right to play knight f4 later. What should you do? I think given that you've played b6, it would be good to maybe play something like bishop a6, just to develop. Bishop b7 as well. You're doing fine. You're doing fine. And maybe the tactical thing that you need to realize is, I don't know, let's just put it on b7 for a second. Knight g3, you always have this out. See? You always got that out, and you're whacking this pawn. You are much better developed. Okay? Now, is ed4 a double question mark? It's hard for me to call that a double question mark. Is it a mistake? Maybe. But a double question mark to me means you've dropped something. And again, the thing that you need to do in your coming games is just focus on not dropping stuff. Okay? And knight d, this does not drop anything. Okay, interesting, maybe. I guess I was thinking you would play bishop b7. You have that as a note. Okay, let's see. I still think you're worried about f4, and it's definitely hot, but it comes at some of a cost. He has to be very careful now because he's not developed. Okay, maybe a good move. And now you did that. Okay, let's think about this. So, dude is about to play f4. And now we have ourselves a very tactical situation. I'm not convinced that we are toast here. But I definitely want to acknowledge that it is hot. That it is very hot. First point to see is that f4, knight g4, it's not clear that we're getting roasted here. Right? And I'll stress that we really want to try to open things up before this guy figures out the need to develop their pieces. And that's not super simple, but imagine we played c5. That's very frisky, honestly. I don't know. That's frisky. Okay. Another interesting attempt that I don't know how I feel about yet. No, I don't like that either. So let me just say the obvious. With knight g6, see, bishop e2, he's not actually completely set on playing f4. He's not actually ready yet because you have knight g4. And it's not the end of the world. So a default move could be g6 if you find nothing else. And maybe you can get away with rook e8. Yeah. Because he's not really threatening to wreck you yet. And rook e8, like the second he plays f4, then we're going to get some juice on the e file. All right, let's look. Knight g6. Okay. Queen h3 definitely would have been interesting. And yeah, it asks him some questions. Notice that when he plays f4, he is making that pawn in his center a little bit weak. Now, one of the interesting things about this from a strategic point of view is, I don't know if he should take the knight. Now, at this level, they love to take the knight because they're like, oh, I'm doubling the pawns. I got him. But it's not so easy because the knight on h5 is like your worst piece. So yes, he doubles your pawns, but he doesn't actually. He solves one of your main problems by doing so. Queen h3 I like better, not just from the perspective of not allowing him to double the pawns, but also because the queen isn't entirely happy on d7, so you're kind of doing more than one thing at a time. All right, let's look. Pop, pop. Good. By the way, your opponent's playing a good game. Good. Okay, why is h4 incorrect? Because it's not, let's call it, it's not a developing move. It's a comfort move. The dude is comforted by the fact that he's like pushing his pawns. Let's say some things here. Opposite sides castling. It means the value of time goes up. It means somebody is going to get mated. The other reason that this is going to be, value of time is going to go up, is the bishops of opposite color will mean if you get an attack on the light squares, you are up a piece on the light squares. If he gets an attack on the dark squares, he's up a piece on the dark squares. Okay. When we say the value of time goes up, what we mean is time is always important, but in an open position with opposite sides castling, we can say, oh, time is more important in relationship to material than it was. Now, let's say normally we say we'll sack a pawn for 3 tempi. I'm getting real highfalutin now, aren't we? We say sack a pawn for 3 tempi. I'm just saying it's more important. Maybe you'd sack a pawn for 1 tempo at this point, because whoever arrives at the opponent's king is going to get there first. Now, that's really highfalutin speech for saying that your white is better here, and white needs to get the initiative going, right? So I think his default move should be bishop d4. Very simple and strong. I'm sure there's other moves, but h4 just doesn't advance his game. All right, we need a move here. Rook fe8 seems natural. What did you do? Rook a d8. Not sure what that does. Queen e2. Queen g4. Okay, you're worming your way in. I like it. You're worming your way in. Now, bishop d2 seems weird, but I get it. You're harassing the guy. All right, now you need a good move, and you play d5. This might work. Boom. In principle, I like it. What I don't understand about it is what would have happened on queen c7. That's the part I don't get. All right, so pop, pop, and now definitely we should take, or I would think anyways, to take with a knight, so that our juicy bishop continues to fight for those light squares. You did it this way. And also, with knight takes, we have to worry less about queen c7. Knight takes, knight takes. And first of all, let's just take stock here. You have come back, and this dude, because he gave you time, let you completely back into the game, right? Rook hf1, and now you get real frisky and play knight e3. At this point, it's not easy for me to say who's better and why, but after the move queen g4, I would guess that you're the one who must be better. You're talking to his pawns, your knight's better than his bishop, yada yada. After knight e3, I'm not exactly sure what's happening. All right, Kraai, you gotta read the chat, buddy. First of all, thank you to Samuel Baltz, who has subscribed for 18 months. Fantastic. So, let's see what else we got. So, here we go. Pop, check to the miserable king. And now, let's talk about it. Why is rook d1 incorrect? Because you are giving him the open file. I'm really trying to say give them the open file instead, to make it genderless. I just think about this. All right, quick rant. So I'm doing this Chessable course, and they, back in the day we would say he as a reference to the player, and I get it, that's no longer cool. But here, let me just tell the story that relates not just to some weird political thing, but to chess. Once you get to a certain level, usually around IM, you begin to see that your pieces have feelings. If you don't see that your pieces have feelings, then you will never make it to that level. You won't feel when they're in pain, when they need help, right? You just won't feel it. And so you won't be able to get to that higher level. As such, you begin to see your pieces as a collection of forces that talk to one another, that have personalities, that have dreams. And so, when I write a sentence like, black is better, comma, they have the center and the bishops, it's not clear who they is referring to in the sentence. Now, I know people are going to say, Kraai, get over it. This is a political thing. It's they is now a different kind of pronoun. I'm not interested in that. I'm trying to make a point about chess, okay? Here's the point. Once you get to 2400 and you understand that your pieces have feelings, then they, to that person over 2400, sounds like we're talking about the pieces. In fact, in the sentence, we're talking about the player of black. So it's a really confusing thing for Boomer GM here. I would say it's confusing. It's unsatisfying, especially because I got write a lot of sentences that have that kind of grammatic structure. It's a problem. In any case, when I then come on stream, I blow it all the time. And I got chastised, probably rightly, because I was going over someone's game. I said I misgendered them, okay? I misgendered them. I called them a he. They were not a he. I got in big trouble. Okay, so there it is. Boomer GM gets it. I get the problem, okay? You don't need to yell at me about the problem. I get it. All right, let's look. Pop, pop, and now c5. So I'm going to suggest that queen f3 would have been a little bit more annoying because we don't want to give white a move to play rook d7. That's the dream after we've given them the file. So c5, b3. Boomer GM would rather see a4. That's fine. That's fine. Rook e8. And now f5 is a very frisky move. Very frisky. Maybe correct. And here we have ourselves an interesting position where you said queen e4. If I can get a queen trade, I can win that h4 pawn and have an outside passer. Okay, now, queen e4, by the way, is very well intentioned. And there are problems here. There's some beautiful problems, in fact. First of all, are we certain that after queen e4 you are alive? I am not. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. Second of all, did dude have this move, rook d8? Luckily for us, he does not, because queen e1 and then takes. That's a little lucky on our parts, but that's a move we have to consider. Okay, so now let's first address the question, are we in fact equal after queen e4, rook e4, and f6. All right, let's take a look. So, unless we want to go fully passive with rook e8, we got to play f(h6). Then I'm concerned because checked the miserable king. King here. King here, rook here, excuse me. Let's take once. I got to take back. King g6, checked the miserable king. King here. And maybe we're surviving this, but it has to be checked. Okay, let's try it again. It was very complicated, easy to miss something. So f6. Seems like it's working. Okay, good, good. So what does this mean from White's perspective? That f6 would have been more interesting. Is that correct? It's still, you're absolutely right. There's still chances for you here. You gotta play h6. Yeah, and it's true. Rook e4 gives you counterplay. All right, let's look at this again. So if we stop for a second, we can say b3 had to be correct. Rook e8. And then f5 was very frisky. The natural rook d7, though, seems really hard to meet. I kind of like the romance of f5, right? Like f5 is really trying to shut you out, but rook d7 would be the move to start thinking about it. Yeah, and it looks bad. By the way, White in general should not want to trade queens because their advantage is not only in the pawn structure, it's much more in the fact that their king is safer than ours. Being bad at chess, thank you for subscribing. Yeah. So here we go. f5, queen e4, snip, snop. It was a recent game, I think yesterday, where someone said equal in a position mildly similar to this, and I was like, oh, I don't know. I was like, oh, I don't know, buddy. Not sure. It's too hot for me. Boomer GM doesn't know. Let's think about this. It's so hot. It's so hot in this position. And one of the interesting things that's going down is those pawns, White's pawns, either cage you or they don't. If they cage you, then he's going to win and can create mating patterns. If they do not cage you, they're just going to fall like ripe apples, and your own H-pawn is going to be a genius, right? Yeah. So here he comes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And now we need a good move as black. I think rook f4 or rook g4 is going to be it. Let's see what you did. Ooh, I don't like it. Okay. So I like rook f4 a lot. Rook g4 is also a move. The point with rook f4 is we're saying when dude plays f6, as we think they must. See, do you like the they? As we think they must, f6, we are going to play h6. And our basic claim to fame here is that our h-pawn is going to be a genius. A real bummer, in fact, for White. A real bummer. And we're not getting mated, right? We're not getting mated. So this looks to be a difficult position for White to play. Maybe they could try to, I don't know, try to do, no, Christ, slow it down. You just take on f6. Thank you very much. Game over. And then, of course, h6, pop. We're just going to go, baby. We're just welcome to the dojo, right? Welcome to the dojo, baby. We're gone. We're gone, son. I'm gone. I'm out of here. You know. Yeah. It looks like toast. That's a pawn. And so you see our king is, a lot of these variations is going to come up to be the shepherd. Okay, so what king f8 does is it walks into f6. And now we cannot play h6. So now rook e4 happens. Good. And white needs to create something right now. Plays king c1, and you play h4. Good move. Does white have any fancy sauce here? Let's go back and move. Now, it's critical of king f8, and I still like rook f4 better, but this at least does present white with some very serious questions about how on earth, buddy, are you going to fix your rook's activity? No, I'm okay. It's great, dude. No, I can't say anything against it. This is fantastic. So I didn't think it would work, but it's looking to. I don't see a way for white to deal with this. Rook d2. King e8. Very good. Now we can play rook h4 next. What? Oh, man. Oh. Oh, no. That is sad. So, first of all, actually, Omega Dave, I want to say something. This game, as in my experience as a coach, has been played on a much higher level than either player's rating. There's not that much dropping of stuff. Here we have a clear dropping of stuff, right? Clear dropping of stuff. But other than that, you're playing really well. And here you actually give a huge line after rook h4. Basically, though, you're winning. You're winning. You're going to get your king here before he gets his king there. And I don't see... It's very difficult for white to create a passed pawn on the queen side. And rook e2 isn't going to do it. Rook e2, he's just going to have to go back. So what's going on? We're talking about the principle of the active rook. You have more active pieces than he does. Let's go make a little variation. This would be my variation. Maybe it's your variation too. Let's go king e2, pop, 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 pop. And why can't we just play king g5? All right, play king g5. Thank you very much. Game. That's it. That's it. Okay. So let's see. Rook h3. Is it all over? Let's see what happens. I think objectively it is, but it's not. We might still have hopes because our king is a little more powerful. Oh, I didn't like that one. I would rather play king e6. And we might have a legitimate question about. No, we don't. So here, see, he would have to be a little more concerned. We could also say that this looks more accurate. And here, yes, we can argue that you're lost, and maybe you are, but it's still a long road, right? But then the way this goes down, now I don't see how to do it. Now your king is stretched between needing to deal with the f-pawn and needing to deal with the b-pawn. Good move. And then here we're toast completely because white has the two connected passed pawns. Let's see what happens. Good. I don't understand, but I also don't have any great advice. Yeah, that can't be it. Okay. So, again, I want to just reframe what's going on here. Dave, a.k.a. D. Kufos, wrote a nice sensei question on our Discord. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check out the training program, the Chess Dojo training program. And the question was, dude, I'm doing all the work, but I'm not going up. I feel like my chess understanding is increased, but I'm hanging stuff. And honestly, I was expecting when I started this game review that I would see a lot more hanging of stuff. But honestly, that's a pretty strong game from both sides. Let's run through it again. Not a mistake. There's no way bishop b7 is a mistake. Fine. And b6 is funky, but you did find yourself in a kind of interesting situation where you need to react with the principal action on the wing is that meant by action in the center. However, Kraai, in your basic blueprint of the under 1,000 crowd, you were the one who said, don't give me any of this Nimzovich garbage. Focus on not dropping stuff. So b6 is still okay. Knight h5 is okay. E takes is a little weird, right? Because you're losing the ability to play knight f4. That was frisky, maybe unnecessary. And that was a mistake. Did he need to go take your bad bishop? Not really. And now you're mostly fine. Oh, yeah. Here we're going to say queen h3 is better. Here you're probably lost, but there's still a long way. h4, clear loss of time. I want you to put a rook on the e file instead. But actually, let's just say your intention ends up working out. Your intention was, hey, I want to play d5 later. Okay. So there we're going to say that was your first clear dropping of material with queen c7. And it's just a bummer because she's like, I think you're losing a piece, right? Okay, your opponent doesn't see it though. I like knight d5 better, mostly because I don't really understand what we're going to do on queen c7. And I liked queen g4 here better. However, it's still not talking about dropping of pieces. I didn't like rook d1 because you gave white the file. I like queen f3 because I really don't want him to have the ability to play rook d7. I wanted him to play rook d7 here. And it really is winning material. Okay, so he's the one getting a little frisky. You get this. And then the amazing thing here is, I encourage everyone not to think of these rook endgames as equal. It's a common thing. I see, even at higher levels sometimes, it'll be someone will say, this is equal. I have no idea. This is rich, man. Again, if white's pawns can dominate the king, then black is toast. If not, then that h-pawn, as we see could have happened in the game, is going to become a real thing. Pop, thank you very much. And then here I didn't like king f8, but I also didn't refute it. Got it. Okay. The problem with king f8 was rook b7, and now he has a nice reorganizing move. Still going to get frisky, though, with rook b6 and intending swing. Now, we're just actually at the beginning of this hectic variation, because if rook g4, which I think he should do, here's the point with rook g4. Pop, pop, and now here's the threat, but I can't do it until you play h4. If I do it before you play h4, then there's king g7. So I run. Now, the only way for me to play h4 is then to play king g7. We get this thing. It looks like white's winning the race. Okay, let's go back. Very complicated. Rook b7. Again, white's intention is not only to win the pawn, but have a way to get Grover over. That's not easy. Not easy at all. Okay, so in this position, we wanted rook f4. Now, was this some easy thing? No, that wasn't even easy for me to figure out. F6, mistake. Rook e4, genius. Genius not because, I guess you could say anyone could find it, but the fact that it's genius about it is that, oh, black is in fact, looks like winning this position. Okay, king c1 didn't help. There we go, now we're running, baby. Too slow. And now we just need to play rook h4. So again, Mr. Kufos, you are doing great, dude. You're going to make it. We're going to have you on the graduate show soon. You're doing fine. And yes, the blunder king d7 was what killed you. Okay? But it wasn't like you're not dropping your pieces all over the place. I'm not seeing a yard sale here. Okay? At some point, we might look at some of your other games. But, dude, don't fret. Trust the program. You're going to go up, dog. You're going to go up. All right, let's do another game. The Kolya Gambit. I don't know what the Kolya Gambit is. Can you read the chat? I can read the chat. Sometimes I'm involved in the game analysis, and I don't read it. But I do my best. Okay, let's get in the next game. The next game is Percyfall. And how did I get on to Mr. Percyfall? I believe there was some question, also a sensei question. Right. So Mr. Percyfall has this great thing that we're trying to institute, which is, can we get a forum channel for annotated game reviews? He wants it for selfish purposes, and I said to myself, dude, let's go look at one of Percyfall's games for the show today. Basically, the intention is that the heart of the program is annotating your own games. We want people who are higher rated to look at games of people who are lower rated. It's not just a favor. It's the act of looking at someone's game and putting into words what you think they could do better. That will help you improve. This is known, right? And so it's not just as a favor to the community that you, let's say you're 1,500 and you go look at someone who's rated 1,000 and you look at their game and try to put into words what you think is happening. Beautiful for your chess. It's not just about doing the 1,000 rated player a favor. Okay, so that's what we're going to try to do. We are rebooting the site for our year anniversary. There's a lot involved. The to-do list for May 1st gets bigger and bigger. Oh, man. Every time me and Kostya speak, man, we go on a little Zoom call, and every time that list of stuff, just gets bigger and bigger. But definitely, like, a way for people to do this. We got Jack Stenglein. We're going to look at one of his games. He's a hero of the dojo. The guy is, like, solving a lot of the dojo problems. We have his scheduler, especially, boom. Like now we have a way for people to easily get together and do things like get on a Zoom call for a 1,500 and 1,000 to talk about the notes. All right, let's get back into the jungle here. So this is Percyfall being black. Let's see what they say. All right, so this is very recent notes. Good. The engine was not used to validate my annotations. Good. Right. So, as we've seen, I think these are Chess.com ratings. Then I'm going to have to yell at Percyfall in the same way that I yell at other people that now we're talking about this and that, opening Yobava, King's Indian, and yeah. D6 and D5 are both fine, but at this level it has nothing to do with names like Yobava and yada yada. All right, here we go. D5. Frisky. Okay. Yeah, and here, one of the great things is the guy is putting you under a little bit of pressure, and you have to figure it out. And it's not super easy to know what to do here. But I think if you follow opening principles, you're going to be fine. So you've got H5 by the way, let's talk about H4. The only way we could say h4 is great or good is if he's truly developing the rook on h1. If he's not, this h4 thing, not the most impressive, right? It does ask you this, on a practical level, it asks you a really interesting question. So let's say our basic options would be h6, h5, or ignore the thing. Personally, because I'm a tempo fiend, I've always enjoyed ignoring the thing, okay? So my first question will be, well, what about that, Baus? What are you going to do to me, Baus? In any case, let's look at h5. And yes, you are creating some weaknesses, and maybe this knight can now land on this square. But it's fundamentally okay. An aggressive move, right? One thing that you should maybe frame it as is your opponent is moving a developed piece twice, and now you can start focusing on winning the battle of development. I think your move c5 is fantastic. Knight c6 looks good. Maybe, yeah, there's other moves too, but c5 looks great. And when we play it, we should say to ourselves, I'm fighting for the center, and I'm giving my queen dreams of maybe playing something like queen b6 or queen a5. And right, your opponent kind of freaks out in f3. Now, if I was reviewing it from White's perspective, I would say, bro, look what you've done. You followed some Yubava London course on Chessable, and now you're losing your mind with all this stuff. Let's talk about this weird thing that White's done to himself. When you get highfalutin, okay, it's going to be really difficult to play principled chess. And when you don't play principled chess, it's going to be really hard to find the right moves. So, for example, in this position, it's not clear that White has the right to attack Black's king, especially because White's own king, if it's going to castle queenside, it's not going to be safe over there itself. So it's very difficult to know what White should do here. And what am I trying to say? That this guy who is playing White is following some kind of logic that they've seen in a course that was too highfalutin for them, right? And I can say f3, we should just be thankful. We should be thankful. This dude is not developing their stuff. And we're not worried about dc5 because that's not developing. My gut sense is that queen d2 probably needs to be played. Okay, it's not an easy position for White to play. Whereas for Black, I think, dude, we're playing knight c6 or something like that soon. Okay, so I have seen positions like this, and I think there's like a course I saw, it was like London Yubava for chumps or something like that. And it had a lot of moves like this, so I'm pretty sure that's what White's kind of schematically following. We should say that f3, that White's intentions with f3 are probably pretty grand. He wants to maybe play g4. g4 is not working out anytime soon. We can just ignore it for one thing. But the next thing is we should acknowledge that it does at least control e4 and therefore controls our knight on f6. Okay? Now, what do I think Black's best move is? You can ask yourself, you can play along. You can play along with me. What do I think Black's best move is in this position? I haven't seen what Percival played yet, but for me, it's definitely knight c6. We're going to play knight c6, Baus. We don't even know what you're going to do. I just know that that's where my knight wants to go. We'll worry about other things later. Let's see what he did. He took. Probably not so bad. The issue with this is our c pawn is better than the e pawn, right? And now we're going to be opening up the e file for him, all right? Still, not so bad. Now, it's definitely not equal. It's definitely not equal. Let's read what he says. At this point, the position looks to be fairly equal. Both sides have developed most of their pieces. Whites are a little more active, but somewhat uncoordinated. Okay. Yeah. So, let's talk about it. Let's talk about tempo, first of all. Okay. So this is the basic way I think is good to talk about tempo. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. and dude also has 4. However, it is our move, okay? So that's why I'm saying we're up a tempo. Important just to get that going. Now, why do I not like knight e5? Because you are going to lose a tempo when he takes back, and then the knight is going to be shoved away from the center. Now, maybe there's going to be, no, I don't think there is. It's going to get a little loosey-goosey, let's put it that way. Okay, so what could be a default plan? Bishop f5 maybe, is what you wrote. I definitely don't think white's better after bishop f5. The point is, it's going to be opposite sides castling. It's going to get hot. And once our rook lands on c8, knight b4 is going to be a real thing. The question, as you rightly say, with bishop f5 is maybe you got to worry about bishop g4. Correct. All right, let's think about this position for a second. I'm going to say I definitely like black, but it's hot. It is very hot. And if we're going to make an argument for white, it's that the f3 pawn is controlling our g7 bishop. Okay. One thing that I would like to stress is that we really would like to get the jump. And by the jump, I mean get our development going as fast as possible. And kind of definitely a challenge is I want to put my rook on c8, but it's not immediately clear how I effectively get it there. Now, let's look at bishop f5. It's definitely the most, let's call it power move, or a move with the most juice, something like that. g4 is very frisky, mostly because dude hasn't developed yet. Pop, pop. And if knight g4 doesn't work, we could consider knight e4. Pop. Now, if he takes, you're definitely doing great. So let's just say the optically obvious thing here, that dude doesn't have the right to mate you because he doesn't have stuff developed yet, right? So bishop f5 is very hot, but I think you are definitely on top, and we could continue it maybe like castles. Your opponent doesn't seem like the kind of dude to develop, but that would be on my agenda. Rook c8, and we got a party. We got a party happening here, and I like your position a lot. We're about to play knight b4, and it's going to get hot. Okay, let's continue with the game. Yeah, the real problem here is you're losing some stuff, and you got to play knight d7. But it's a hard life, so you're definitely worse here. Okay, I agree with you. Knight d5 is more fighting. Good move. Good move. You're developing. Now notice what white is doing. What white is doing is saying, oh, I want a pawn. Let's trade off some stuff. And what they need to realize is that it's not so easy here, especially because the pawn on e5 is loose and the bishop on f4 is blocked. So if you can get a jump in the development, you're going to get more than enough compensation. I like it. I like it. I like it. And now you say equality. Interesting. The reason I would say white is better in this position, or at least that would be my default belief, is that his king is better than your king. Right? Now, it's a very hot position. King e2, I'm not convinced by knight d5. I don't like knight d5. Would you have been, yeah, how do we feel about the position on knight e6? Looks like we get a little bit of juice because he has to worry about knight d4. Game will go on. Knight d5. What's my big concern? My concern is that even if white loses a pawn, that their king's position will mean that they're essentially up a piece in this ending. Okay, so bishop h2 feels a little weird to me. Why not go to g3? Notice, too, what's going on in the, this is a mild qualm, but I think it will help not only you, but other people. You call this equal, and then you don't give any mistakes for either side, and say that this would be an advantage for white. And it is, because dude's up a pawn. But right, you haven't made any mistakes up to this point, from the point you declared it being equal, which I think is probably the wrong assessment. Again, the power of making correct evaluations, judging a position, absolutely key for any chess player, right? We're going to add how to evaluate like a GM to our course books on May 1st. And yeah, one of the things that maybe both players didn't appreciate is just the power of the white king being able to do stuff while the black king isn't doing anything. Okay. Now, f4 seems very strange to me, because why is he blocking his bishop, right? Wouldn't it be more fancy to play d4? Now, by the way, it's going to get really hot here. It's still not over, whether it's f4 or d4. You play f6, and then I don't get it. Why wouldn't we play, let's think about this. Okay, very basic question. Can we get some kind of juice against this guy? And maybe it's just not so easy. Yeah, it looks like he's got it covered. One of the key points is, of course, here, Pop, he's got this move, unfortunately. And this would be the case whether the guy played d4 or f4. So even though f4 makes me squirm a little bit, it doesn't seem like it loses the advantage for him. Good move. Simple, but simple and strong. Good move. That probably isn't good, because after this move, what do we do? Yeah, so we lost the tempo. All right? So again, the loss of tempo, critical to playing endgames. We see it all the time, people losing time. What would be better? Probably as an attempt to move like king f7. You got to get your dog in. Okay. Unclear what that does. No. Okay, now you get frisky. Now you get frisky. And what I want you to see is that from a practical point of view, getting frisky is not a bad idea. From an objective point of view, we probably need to get our king moving, right? So let's see how they played it. G3. Oh, look how he kills his bishop. Oh, it's making me die. First point he played f4, made me die, and now he plays g3. He's just trying to kill his bishop. So definitely the most intuitive way for him to play this would be pop, pop, pop. And I don't see how you live through that, Baus. This baby's rolling. And then what? Let's just make a point. You put the pawns in the opposite color, Baus. Opposite color, so that the pawns control the light, your bishop controls the dark. Look at that pawn on f5. Genius. Okay, g3, and you played g4 and criticized it. I think it's mostly okay. You're still in trouble, even though he's committed high crimes with this move, g3. Aesthetic crimes more than anything else. So here we go, g4, e6. Maybe, but frisky because he's not fixing his bishop. Fix your bishop, Baus. Fix it. Bishop g1, fix the bishop. Okay. I don't know where you're going. I don't know where you're going. And now the position's really close. Yeah. Seems like you had to play b6 there, because bishop c5 is a hell of a drug. Yeah. Toast. Yep. Okay. Actually, so let me just say, Mr. Percival, that I think Aaron is his first name. Played a great game, dude. And again, like the first game we looked at today, in my experience, this was played at a higher level than your standard 1298 game, for sure. For sure. Not because of the opening stuff, but because what I saw was people not dropping. Did we see a lot of dropping? Let's just go look again at the droppings. So far, we'll call that a material mistake, because you are dropping the pawn. Okay? And I'm just asking myself if we can call this next move a mistake that has to do with material. Bishop h2 was weird, and let's just say that the other variation, we could go down this road a second. And then the king goes somewhere. Let's put it on f2 for a second. Knight f5, and then we might get this position. And then at the very minimum, the bishop is dead. But I'm just asking myself, was it a material mistake? And the answer is no. Not a material mistake. That was a tempo mistake. Now, that was a passivity mistake. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think when you take c, you're going to open up this stupid bishop. All right. Was there a way for you to somehow still make this game interesting here? It feels like maybe you got a chance because he's killed his bishop. Unfortunately for us, our own bishop really has some grief here, right? It has some real grief. But king g7, it's hard. It's a hard life. It truly is. Okay, so I didn't see, besides one mistake, I didn't see you dropping material, which at this level is the big one. Yeah. So that was a good and great analysis. By the way, if you look in, anyone looks in our database, these people are putting in great work for the game analysis. And yeah, actually, first of all, I really think this is great, man. So you're doing great. And I would say that the opening stuff for both players is confusing you. Okay, but the game review, fantastic. Like, look at this note. DC5, relevant master game between Caruana and Carlsen. And where that's confusing is DC5, you either have to be a chump to play that move or a super GM. Because you're giving away time. Maybe the computer likes it, and maybe that's why Caruana played it, right? But it's a very frisky move because you've lost a tempo, lost your center, and opened your bad boy up. The whole point of the London, in a lot of ways, is to keep that pawn on d4 as a lock to the bishop on g7. Ampersand, thank you for being here. Okay. So let's do one more game. This is Jack Stenglein, hero of the dojo. And let's reverse. Jack is, I think we looked the other day at another game that Jack played, the Caro. And and he says he did some furious study on the Goldman. Now, let me just say, I've never heard of the Goldman myself. It looks ridiculous. I'm going to go ahead and say it is ridiculous. But does it break principles? Only mildly. Only mildly, right? Okay. So here we go. E5, can't be wrong. Could you do a variety of other things here? Yes. Any move is going to be fine here. Even knight f6 is going to be fine. I'm not sure I get him taking. He has to... Yeah, okay. Genius. Genius level. So we've sacrificed a pawn. Our claim is that the queen on f3 is misplaced. I like it. At this point, I was out of my preparation. I remembered seeing this move, but couldn't remember Black's response. So I had to actually start thinking here. Okay, now let's stress that a lot of times when we're doing this opening prep, and this applies to GMs too, what will happen is we'll turn on the machine will say this, that, and the other thing, and then it'll be hard to see it through our own eyes. And so in the annotations, it's good to start thinking about like, well, what did I see? What do I think is going on? Do I think I'm better? You know, very basic questions. Knight e2, of course, looks like a very simple and strong move. Maybe the computer has some beef with it. I don't know. All right, here we go. Bishop c5 certainly seems natural. Knight e4. Now, why is knight e4 controversial? By the way, I ask my students this all the time, and they usually get it wrong, even though they know, once they hear it, they're like, oh, I've heard Kraai say that so many times. Why is it wrong, my friends? And I'll read what ampersand is saying. It was a fun one to play, just got ground down there in the middle game. Yeah. Okay, great. Why is knight e4 a mistake? It loses the tempo. That's why it's a mistake, right? It's not because it allows white to trade one of his most active pieces. So let's talk about the dynamic for a second. At some point, you're going to play knight d4. And when that happens, there's going to be some tactical questions around the bishop and the pawn going to d4, yada, yada. If white relieves the tension with bishop c6, we're going to say bishop takes c6, and we're just going to be happy. We're just going to say thank you, and we're going to proceed. So after castles, we got ourselves a really interesting position. And one, I think it would help to think about what compensation means. For example, castles, d3, how do we assess this position? And yeah, I don't know, interesting position, very interesting position. I'll just go ahead and say it. It's very difficult for me to immediately assess. This move might be a problem, for example. I don't know. And like I said, the bishop is kind of on b5, is a little bit hung out to dry, and if he ever takes on c6, we'll be happy. Let's go back a half a second. A move that breaks the principles would be knight b4. That's pretty frisky, Kraai, but I'll just put that out there. That's something else we could think about. That might be the reason why the computer doesn't like it. I don't know. And by it, I mean the knight ge2, because you said you were out of your prep. Pop, pop, and now queen b6. Okay. I'll go ahead and say, at this level, Jack, you can see, is higher. He's allowed to study some openings according to the program, okay? At this level, the biggest problem will be them giving away time. So one of the reasons when they do give away time, we want to say it, right? Now we have ourselves a really interesting tactical situation where you go queen b6. question to me on queen b6 is what's going to happen on bishop c6, and we're going to get to that variation in half a second. The other position, though, that, let's see if you talk about it, would be what about bishop f2, king f2, queen b6? How do we evaluate that position? At a first glance, it seems like you're winning that to me. Or let's not say winning. Let's say you're doing great. Okay? There's still some things to work out with that position. I'm just going to mention that. And if that doesn't work, then we can just say, Baus, I'm really happy about castling because my development is so much better than dudes. And then I can play queen b6 next. Okay, here we go. Now, was queen b6 a double question mark? I don't know. Let's just see how the analysis could have gone here. So white played d4, definitely kind of weird. Let's look at d4, bishop takes. Sniff, snuff, and now you give bishop e7. But the reason I'm not 100% convinced that white is doing great here is, what would happen if I played king f8? Would I have compensation because my bishops are amazing? And the short answer is I'm not 100% sure. I just know that if I was white here, I'd be terrified. Rook e8 is coming. I got to deal with that. Life isn't that simple, you know? I'm gonna go ahead and say as white, I'm terrified. I'm just absolutely terrified. Let's do a quick variation. d4, check the miserable king. This is just bad news. So notice bishop d2, check to the miserable queen, check to the miserable king, check to the miserable king, check to the miserable. Oh, and there's no. I was gonna say this. What are you saying, Kraai? It's done. It's a done deal. See, it's just too powerful. The business is gonna get it. So after king f8, I don't know. It still looks really bad for him. And let's say the obvious king f8, highfalutin move that you would need to see when playing queen b6, right? So I'm not sure queen b6 is a mistake. Let me do my favorite spiel. People hate it when I do this spiel. People tell me, Kraai, buddy, I need to do more tactics. And I say, boss, it's in your own games. And they say, Kraai, what do you mean, buddy? What do you mean? And I say, really, no, they're there. So I just want to say, this kind of position, if you're doing the analysis, you should sit there with a board and try to figure it out, because it's a critical position. White's just broken the rules with knight e4. And now it's time to hurt the fool. Is it queen b6? Is it castles? Is it something else? You know? Yeah. All right, let's look at the game. Queen b6, d4. Given the bishop c6 has such bad repercussions, well, maybe he should mix it up with d4. All right. So let's look at the analysis here. Ampersand, thank you for subscribing. All right. Knows all. We'll get to one of your games soon. Yeah. The database gets updated by DM Hokie about once a month. Yeah, so I'll do it. Okay, so let's look. It's a very complicated position. Great that Jack is doing the work here. And by work, I mean just going through these variations. So he's saying, instead of queen b5, check to the miserable king would be better. Now, dude's got to play c3, because you got to deal with the fact that we got to attack the bishop, right? Because otherwise we're losing our dowg. So here we go. c3, queen b5, cd4, queen b4, and he says a small advantage to black. Probably, but let's continue just a second. Check to the miserable queen. Check to the miserable rook. Check to the miserable queen. Queen goes somewhere. Obviously it's a hard decision. Let's just put it on a3 for half a second. Takes the miserable pawn. I want to stress, I like black, but maybe we could do better. Let's go back. Okay, so first of all, let's look at your natural move. Pop. And now you played queen c5. I don't understand knight c3 at all. Knight c3 looks like a big mistake. The question would be for me, if dude just castles like a normal person, how would we evaluate the position? Given that he's got bishop e3 as a tempo coming soon, I guess he should be fine. Yeah, the dude should be fine in this position. Okay. By the way, queen b5, reserve the double question mark often refers to the pain that we feel as a regret in our annotations. But it really should be reserved for a move that really totally blows it, right? Whereas definitely queen b5 doesn't totally blow it. And bishop b4, it's not 100% easy for me to just be like, oh yeah, that's a terrible move. The other move we got to look at is the simplistic bishop d4, right? With very simple intentions of saying, Baus, if you take this dude, I'm going to go into this ending. If you take ever on c6, that's fine. I'm going to say my bishop is a Baus. I love saying that, but it's not that impressive, Baus. Okay, Baus? All right, so it wasn't that impressive to play bishop d4. You just wanted to say Baus. d4. Well, look, if bishop c6 is actually not so easy for white. And by the way, what's the point? The point is if he gives us that bishop, our bishop on d7 is going to be a Baus. If he takes it, it's going to be a Baus. So if it's true that that's a not so good situation for white, then the attempt to mix things up here, d4, we got to say is at least a good practical attempt. All right, so let's try to be objective about it. I.e., try to find out what we think the best move is for us here. Let's try your bishop d4 again. This seems forced. Takes. It's complicated. It's complicated. Let's say we go down this road here. Pop, pop, pop. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. What else are we supposed to do, right? Queen a4 is weird because b3 if nothing else. So pop, pop. I'm not coming up with a great move here. And then we have to say that on a move like queen a3, not only de, which kind of like seems hard to judge. Maybe the dude has some kind of d5 thing, which could also be unpleasant for a peasant. Okay, so let's continue. Let me just say, Jack, this is a very difficult decision here for you. And for sure, d4 I think is a good practical decision from white because he's in trouble. And this is not an easy decision. I would definitely, like, if I was playing a game 90, I would definitely spend some good time here. Even now, I'm not sure. Do I also believe that you should be a little bit better here? I do, but I haven't actually, it's not super easy for me to just find it. Okay, let's look what happened. Pop, 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 and then the weird move knight c3. Jack, I'll say it again. What is the problem with these people? They don't respect time, okay? So, in this position, we're going to say that time is about, that you're up a tempo here, okay? You've got 3, dude's got 2, it's their move. Unfortunately for us, bishop e3 is probably going to win a tempo, right? So that's why I have faith in white's position here. However, knight c3, bows. Now we got 3, he's got 2, and it's our move, so we got 2. Can we do something constructive with it? Let's see. Castles. Now he goes bishop e3. Good move. Good move. I thought it was a good move anyway. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't. Let's see. I thought it was a good intention. I'm beginning to see there's problems with it. So wait, time out. Let's go back. Again, a complicated position, Jack, for me as well. Okay? This is not super easy. Does this fool deserve death? Yes, he does. Especially after knight c3. Okay, one frisky move would be knight d4. And you can say to me, Kraai, didn't you just tell me not to move my pieces twice? I did say it. The point here is, obviously, we're doing two things. We're preempting bishop e3, so I don't lose a tempo. And we're organizing bishop c6. Are you going to call it the bows again? I am going to call it the bows. It's the bows. It's the bows. Once I get that bishop there, man, that's the bows. So queen b7, I have bishop c6. Maybe the critical line would be bishop e3, bishop c6. Do not play bishop f5, because then we'd have a queen f5 problem. Bishop d4, intermezzo. Queen d4. We're going to call this move forced. We're going to call that move forced. We're going to call this move forced. And now we're going to probably castle long, but we can do other things. Pap! And we're doing great. We might have been able to also play bishop g2 directly. But this position is just glorious for us. We're about to play bishop, like if castle's long, which would be the only move I'd really want to calculate deeply, I've got bishop g2 followed by bishop f3. Maybe his best move here is f3, but I can talk to him with both rook h e8 and d3 directly. Pop. Better minor piece, better development. Okay? So, obviously, if I was playing a game, I'd want to check that variation. And notice, too, that as black, I'm not interested in doing a move which breaks the principles on the face of things, like knight d4, unless I've already looked at other things and it wasn't easy. So, for example, your first take of it, castles, well, sure, that would also be mine. But then the problem is really we're losing a tempo here, right? And then this move, which looks like we're doing something nice, is running into all kinds of grief after pop, pop, and correctly white plays castles, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh no. I was going to say we screwed the pooch, but that's not acceptable. We screwed the pooch. He screwed the pooch. Oh, Kraai, you got to say it, buddy. You got to say it. We're in trouble. We're in trouble. He's tapping our bishop, and bishop c5 is about to come. I think we're toast, dude. Yeah. Okay, so here we go. Pop. Pop. All right, now there's two problems. One is we are Actually, you come up with some fancy sows here. You come up with some very fancy sows. Okay, timeout. This is really spicy. By the way, great resourcefulness. Let's look at Jack's resourcefulness here. So look at this. Check to the miserable king, and then let's give White a little cold shower. He thought he was winning the game. I kind of thought he was too. But look, it's not over, Grover. Right? Okay, so let's go back and think about it from White's perspective. We're going to say he's better for a variety of reasons, positionally. That his king is better, and he's got the jump, right? I.e., it's his move, and the knight MB4 is honestly, should be a spectator, right? Somebody who's not participating. White misses the tactic of bishop c5, knight a2. I also missed it. I'm not going to pretend. I didn't expect it. So, one thing to say is I don't think knight a2 is a threat because it'll get trapped by knight a2 and b3. Amazingly, it's a threat after bishop c5 because our rook coming to c8 gives us tactics of getting the bishop out. Okay. An amazing position. So yeah, you're not toast here. You're worse, but you're not toast. And rook d2 seems maybe the path for White here. Rook d2, grab the d file. All right, let's look at how it goes down. Check to the miserable king. Bam! Exclam. Jack, give yourself an exclam, buddy. Boom! That's a good move, man. By the way, we have a template problem here. Braden's working on it. I'm going to try to get it organized for tomorrow's graduate show. Basically, we just don't have enough room. And long story short, the chess.com classroom feature, it's rectangular. And the thing we need, of course, is it's rectangular this way. So when I capture it, I can't capture a lot of it. But we're working on it. I'm going to make myself smaller for tomorrow's graduate show. At least that's my hope for what Braden gives me as a template. Okay. Great move, rook fc8. Bam. Here we go. Now, he is consumed now with winning your pawn, and maybe that's the best he's got, but pop, pop, pop. Okay, and let's just say he notes the whole basis of this thing was no puedo play that because of bishop b3. That was part of the magic of the resourcefulness of the rook fc8 move, which, let's just say, Jack, you got a little lucky. I don't think you saw it. I don't think you saw it, boss, when it went down. Okay, here we go. Pop, pop. Okay. Now, this is a position that we would say, let's say, is traditionally regarded as equal, but you can definitely play to win this thing. And he can too. The bishops of opposite color will mean that if dude gets an attack on the light squares, he will be up a piece. If you get an attack, if white gets an attack on the dark squares, he will be up a piece. Okay, I hope I said that grammatically correct. Bishop e6. Okay. Funny thing is, maybe we can make an argument that you're better here, you being black, because a5, a4, that just creates a little bit of drama, you know? And your rook on a8 would be instantly involved. Whereas white, it's a little bit harder to figure out like how white creates juice from their end. Rook d8, I don't like it. I think, especially from a practical point of view, a5 gives them some real questions. Is it still fundamentally equal? Probably. But look, you're the one creating some drama here, right? Giving him something to think about. Whereas I'm not sure what white's doing. I have no idea. Okay. Rook d8 is a sad move, begging for a draw. Okay, here we go. Pop, pop, rook e8. Don't like it. f4. f4 controversial because he's putting it on the wrong color. Good move. Controversial because he's blocking his own rook. Bishop f5. In general, okay. b4. Not sure I understand. Also on the wrong color with b4. Not sure I get rook e4. Rook e1 check. He wants to go to b2. Default move would be king f7. Not sure I'm getting it. Now, let me just say this, Jack. If you watch enough of these streams, you'll see that people playing the endgame have a hardest time with dealing with time. They lose time. And the reason is they don't know what to do. So, for example, you're not feeling the fact that your king is not active. So that's why your default move should be king f7. You didn't know what to do here, so you played rook e1. But obviously, the white king wants some juice and wants to come up. All right, so we lost a couple tempi. c4 seems normal. What's white's dream? He would like to create a passed c-pawn. That's why if you can imagine, if we had to jump earlier and had that a5, a4 in, oh man. Losing time. Okay, so whilst it's losing time, it does at least ask some questions. King c3. You give him a question, and he doesn't really have an answer here. Let me just go back for a second. And we'll say c4 is intuitively a good move, but he didn't calculate rook e4. So let's think about it from his point of view. A basic question would be bishop b8. Not, yes, I'm trying to win a tempo on the pawn, but I also, where does he want to do? He wants to invade. Okay, and then so there's a whole problem with this bishop d6 move. He's not helping his rook on d2 talk to your entrance squares. Good move. Good move. And it looked like rook d4. Yes, rook d4 was his only chance. Check the miserable king. Very good. King b3. That's a ballsy decision. Now, he's in a little trouble, and he sets himself up for this ballsy decision here, king b3. And now we truly have an interesting choice. I like rook c5 a lot because we're defanging him of any play on the queen side, and that's where his king is. If we play rook f4, maybe the king can still, well, he still has dreams about b5, c6. Good move. Rook d5. Oh no, bows. Oh no. All right, let's talk about this. This is a great position for understanding what's happening. Okay, so, Jack, if I was doing the annotations here with rook d5, what I would say is that in this position, king b2, I would evaluate the position like this. Clear advantage black. Okay? Now, it doesn't mean that white can't hold the draw. We're just at the beginning of a long fight. But let's talk about it. The reason we have good chances here is A, we're up a pawn, and B, our bishop and rook are better. Let's talk about why. Because this fool, Kraai, you gotta call him a fool. This fool put his pawns on dark squares, limiting his own bishop's counterplay. So if you think about it from not just an objective, but a practical point of view, dude has a problem where there's hard to imagine what the counterplay is gonna be for him. Whilst we have this bishop with amazing scope now, especially since we've won the pawn, and we can start talking to the weak light squares, right? Okay, let's talk now a little bit more. Bishops of opposite color. All right, there's a common misconception that bishops of opposite color endgames are draw. And the reason that misconception exists is because if you trade everything else off, like happens here with rook d5, then it is a draw, my friend. Then it's like, forget about it. Sometimes you can be up 2 pawns. You're still drawing. So that's where this misconception comes in. When there's other pieces on the board, the drama is, well, I'm up a piece on the light squares. And as you can see, these light squares from white are tender, right? And it's still a long way to go. I'm not trying to say it's some easy victory. But you have a great chance to increase your initiative on the dark squares. And there's a variety of ways we can imagine doing it. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to play king f7 and bring our dude in. Okay, let's look at what happens, see if he gives you a chance. Is it equal? No. No, it's definitely not equal. Is it objectively equal? Yes, but that's a far cry from being equal. Of course, you still have great practical chances on messing with this fool. Okay, took you a while to bring your king out, Jack, but it happened. Okay, I'm not sure I like it. I think g5's fine. You're gonna have to put your pawns on dark squares. Okay, so it's gotta be where it goes. Okay, I'm not sure I love that move. Now, is it objectively drawn? Yes. However, you can still maybe mess with the guy a little bit. The reason h4 was a little funky is he's putting his pawn on a dark square. That's probably not so bad. But yeah, ideally, no. So what is the correct move? The correct try is to at least play for pawn g4. And is it a draw? Yes, it is. And like I said, these positions with the opposite color bishops are almost always going to be a draw. But you can work him. I will confirm from deep experience that it is possible to work people. Okay? This one actually is a little hard to imagine how we're going to work him, but in a practical game, I just tell you that this position is not equal. We still got reasonable chances. Jack, that was a great game, dude. That was a great game, and Jack, you are my hero. You are a hero to the dojo. Helping us out, man. If you don't enjoy me looking at your games, just tell me. But I thought, hey, I'm going to look at some people's games. We're going to take a look at Jack's games. A couple quick things. I guess it's cool that people in the dojo are spending a lot of time before the game looking at all the weird moves that their opponents play, such as queen f3. I know they get obsessed about the opening prep, and this is happening in the Dojo Liga. And my advice for the people is, if you think you're going to get prepared against, just play developing moves that aren't what you normally do. Because Jack has turned on the computer, boss. He's turned it on. And at least you can obviate, that practical advantage. Okay. This is fascinating. And the good news is, even though I'm not a fan of the big opening prep, is that now Jack gets a practical example of what compensation might look like, right? And the thing that really I might want to stress is, I've said it in the videos, I did a whole path of videos of path to 1100, path to 1200, path to 1300. And almost all those videos, what I said was, people are losing time. Great rule of thumb, 3 tempi are worth a pawn. So, from my perspective, 94, you're giving up a third of a pawn. Just on a very right away, boom, basic level analysis. More importantly, though, when we think about Black's position, we've sacrificed a pawn. We have some abstract advantages. We have a little bit of initiative. 94 gives us time, and therefore chances for a big initiative. Okay, and I don't want you to beat yourself up with queen b6, Jack. That was a hard decision, man. That was definitely not a double question mark. There was some really interesting things going on there. At the end of the day, I think I ended up, at least for my analysis, it wasn't as deep as it could have been, thinking that it was maybe the best move. Okay. What else was super interesting about this game? Oh, man, rook fc8. Great, dude. Great, you got lucky. You got lucky, right? And then maybe we'll also stress this moment where I think what I said later about people thinking it's a draw applies a little bit to what I think your preconceptions are when you play rook d8. Because you're kind of like, there's nothing going on here. Let's just trade and go home. But if you look at a5, we have, oh my gosh, dude. If we get a passed a pawn and we'll start ripping them open on the light squares, our squares, well, we're going to give him the business, right? Okay, everybody, I'm going to end it there. It's time for me to eat dinner. I will be back 1:30 Eastern tomorrow. There's a thing called Hammer Time where I can decipher it. I put on Discord and boom, it shows you it in your time zone, but I can't do that just saying it. There might be some chat GPT thing that allows me to do that in the future. Probably Jack Stengline knows how to do that. I don't know how to do it.